Hello there, world of tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Burning Peak, and in today's video, I'll be doing a super heavy tutorial. Super heavies are amongst the most popular types of vehicles in the game, and that's for no wonder. They have a lot of health, they hit hard, and usually have decent armor. In front of us, we have some of the most popular super heavies, the Maus, E100, and the Panzer Kampfwagen 7, all boasting their own capabilities. The Panzer has the most turret armor, but it has the downside of less hit points, and a smaller alpha of something compared to that of like an E100. The Maus has the most hit points, but is obviously the slowest. All of these tanks have their own capabilities. I'm going to be focusing on the E100 today, because this is the most basic E100, or the most basic super heavy. I don't know why my brain said E100, but this is usually the most ground of the super heavies. It's got two very solid gun options, and it's just a rather easy tank to learn how to play, but does come with some challenges. We're going to start out with what you should be running as a loadout. You have two options. You either have mobility or you have accuracy. So we can see, this is my basic accuracy loadout. We have improved hardening, we have obviously V-stabs, and a rammer. My DPM paired with movement is, instead of having the rammer, we have a turbo. You can either run a T3 turbo to get a little bit better on move, or you can run a just turbo in general, which will give you a slight bit better of power to weight. Either way, getting that increase of top speed and overall mobility on certain maps can be absolutely important and save you in a lot of situations. So that is why it is always important to make sure you have the proper loadout on your E100. You should not be going for refined gun on a tank like this. You should not be making it as accurate as possible with an aiming device. You need to be making your E100 have durability, especially in the tracks. Super heavies have very large track wheels, and because of that, they are prone to getting caught in the open, especially with artillery. So you want to make sure that you have fast track repair speeds. Improved hardening not only increases your track durability, but also just allows you to withstand more hits. And because we're on a fairly large map, I am going to be running our second loadout, which gives us a bit more mobility. This is going to allow us to get into the position a little bit sooner to hopefully beat our opponents. Now, this enemy team has a lot of heavies. They got a 60 TP, AMX M4, BZ75, E100 452K, and a 780. That's a lot of tier 10 heavies. And while we do have a lot of hit points at 3,200, and while we may have a lot of armor, at the end of the day, it only takes 4 or 5 shots from a BZ75 to fully kill our tank. So you have to be careful when driving a tank like this. But as I said, running the mobility on this tank allows us to accelerate. Even if we're not really going faster than our top speed, we are just accelerating faster than we normally would have, which is really, really important. And we're staying at a higher top speed. We're already going about 31 kilometers per hour. So what do we want to do? Well, I'm going to load heat to begin with. You always want to keep an eye on what tanks the enemy team has. We also see a Jagdpanzer and a T110E3. So it is not surprising at all to see those vehicles make their way over here as well. This is going to be a hellhole on heavy side. There's going to be a lot of brawls, a lot of hit points, and, well, we're going to see what we can do. We are obviously making our way as fast as possible over here. We can see our teammates poking up the ridge. We are going to poke right around this corner, and we unfortunately missed that E100 by literally an inch. But we were still able to make it around this corner. We can see that the artillery did not hit us, which is obviously very, very nice. We have the BZ75, which we are going to aim it on the hatch of, and there you go. You always want to load heat whenever you're going to be fighting a bunch of other heavies. That's just kind of how it is. The E100 has decent heat pen, 334 mils. It's enough to cut through enough armor that you shouldn't be worried. We're going to reload here in just a moment, and then we're going to aim it on this BZ. You'll notice how I wedged up my turret there. And because of that, not only did the enemy E100 bounce me, but basically everything ended up bouncing me, which is really, really nice. We have the enemy 60 TP, which we are able to slam a 720 damage shell into. You'll notice how I specifically aimed for the mid plate of his vehicle. We also have the 780 aiming in. This is a little bit of an awkward game right now, I can tell you that for a fact. Well, we're going to reload in just a moment here. We have the enemy E100. Unfortunately, our shell did not go where we wanted it to. Now, to be fair, refined gun would not have helped us there. We were not relying on the accuracy of our tank in that situation. We were, but not our, stabilization of the gun. That was just base accuracy. So, a little bit of a different characteristic we were looking for there. We got the enemy 60 TP on the flank, and there you go, 808 shell right into his lower plate. Firing heat gives us that opportunity to overmatch his armor quite a bit easier. So we're already up to 2,000 damage now. We haven't really bled much of our own, and we're doing pretty good. The only health we've lost is to that tank that just tried to hit us. So we're going to poke the enemy E100, and... oh, unfortunate. Again, our shells are just not going exactly where we want them to on that E100. But we do get a little bit of assistance from the RD shooting him, which I guess is alright. You can see I've packed plenty of heat shells, which does give us the opportunity to keep shooting at this enemy E100. We're going to aim it on his vehicle again, and there you go. Finally, a connecting shell for 825 damage. That is what I'm talking about. We're getting out good bleeds here. We're backing up so the 780 can't see me, which is obviously pretty nice. And now we're going to poke again. We've the enemy Jagdpanzer. Now, I know for a fact that the Jagdpanzer will cut right through my armor. So there's no point to poke a Jagdpanzer E100. It is literally just me losing 1,050 health if I do. So I'm going to wait here. I'm not going to do any pokes. Maybe I'll load in an HE shell for the 780 if he decides to poke. But there you go. Jag gets shot with an artillery shot. Again, there's no point to poke the Jag. It's literally just a waste of time. We can see the 60 TP has made it across. Jagdpanzer still looking at our teammate there. He is stunned, and he is starting to back up. So at this point, I'm going to aim it on the Jagdpanzer, and we're going to slam a shell directly into his tank. And not only that, but so does our Panzerkampfwagen. You can see how I'm always making sure that, even though I do have a lot of hit points, I'm not bleeding him unnecessarily as well. That Jagdpanzer is about a 50-50 whether we're going to hit him in the weak spot or not. And I don't really want to take that risk, especially in a vehicle like this that just has a big boxy turret. So, well, at this point, the Jagdpanzer is not doing too well. And not only that, but he was stunned, which allowed us to get out a pretty easy shell into his tank. So, 3,800 damage at this point. Pretty good stuff. We are going to ideally reload. Maybe make a bit of a play here, is what I'm hoping. Oh, but that's a T110E3, which is not ideal. I gotta be real. Well, we're gonna get stunned here. Wow! That shell went to China. This VK is taking this corner super wide and almost just lost me some more health. I don't know why bro backed up so far. I would ideally be where the 452K is, but he kind of took our spot, which is a little annoying. Alright, well, what we're going to do right now is we're going to drive up this hill like this. Oh, I have a damaged engine. I didn't even see that, bro. We're going to drive up this hill, and we're going to aim it on the 121. Ooh, buddy boy is very, very lucky. That's all I'm going to say. Alright, well, we reload, we wait, and we do it once again. The 121, I don't know how much pen it has, but I'm not too worried about it cutting through my armor. So, we're just going to wait here. And now that I have a shell, we're going to poke that 121 one more time. There you go. Right into his turret cheek for 500. Pretty good stuff. We are now up to 4,000 damage. Again, you just gotta spam heat. I mean, that's kind of the way of life when it comes to heavy tanks in this game, but sometimes you don't really have a choice, and that's definitely the case of a match like this when you're up against so many heavily armored vehicles. Like, I don't want to spam heat, but at the same time, if you want to do well in this game, you kind of have to. That's just how World of Tanks is. Now, we tried to hit the enemy 100. Unfortunately, the shot didn't end up penning. We also have the 60 TP who just, okay, snaps us. Alright, well, that's interesting. We are going to make our way up this hill, and kind of hoping the 60 overpokes that. We might be able to hit him, but I guess we'll find out. Let's see. Oh, almost able to hit the 60 from that angle. Come on, back up. Well, guess it doesn't really matter as he is dead at this point. We have the U100 in front, and I'm just going to poke the U100. I don't even care if he hits me. I'm just going to drive right over and slam him in the turret. Beautiful. And the U100 managed to bounce me, so that's even better. Well, at this point, we've already dealt 5,000 damage. We've done our job. We've blocked 4,000 damage just by making sure that our turret and tracks are always eating the shots. You'll notice no matter when I'm driving towards an opponent, I'm always trying to hide my lower plate. That is the #1 rule that you're going to try and do in any Super Heavy is hide your lower plate. Because the moment opponents see your lower plate is the moment they have the ability to bleed you out. So we have the Leopard. There you go. I was tempted to load an HE, but at the same time, I just don't see a reason to. It's just not worth it, especially because we were able to get ourselves 5,600 damage. So this was a great game to really showcase how to kind of use a Super Heavy. You never want to overexpose yourself. Like, sure, you have all that HP, but you can very quickly lose it. You noticed I made one aggressive play, and if that enemy E100 had a brain, he would have penned me in the lower plate or in the sides, and that 60 TP snapped me for 800. That would have been 1,600 health gone instantly. And when you think about that, that's literally half of my health in 10 seconds. So it is very easy to lose health in a vehicle like an E100. It does not matter how much health you have, you can very quickly lose it. But thankfully, we were able to use our DPM, get out some big slaps. Yes, we lost a lot of credits, but that's sometimes what you're going to have to do. You know for a fact that when you're up against vehicles that have a lot of armor, you have to load gold. So, super heavies are not super challenging, honestly. And we're going to make our way actually to a different super heavy next, which is a Japanese one, the Type 5 Heavy. This is a vehicle that I feel a lot of people don't talk about too much, and I wanted to showcase due to the capabilities that this tank has. The reason I picked the Type 5 Heavy is because, first of all, you don't really see too many guides when it comes to this tank, and second of all, it's not your conventional super heavy. You see, all the German super heavies, they're boxes, and this is a box, but it's got some angles. The turret's angled, the side of the hull is angled, even the back of the tank has angles on it. And the reason this is important is because if you're in an E100, a mouse, and you just turn the tank sideways, what ends up happening is your armor becomes more effective on the tracks and on the hull. But in this tank, that's actually not the case, because if you angle it, then the corner cutout here becomes weaker. But if you don't angle it, then the frontal plate is a weak spot. So the Type 5 Heavy is a rather peculiar vehicle. Its armor is more based off of just pure strength. Like its lower plate, for example, is around 300 millimeters thick, which is way better than the U100's 250 effective. But the Type 5 has the downside of the fact that you can't really angle it to get that armor more effective unless you know where you're going to be positioning. So you can bait shells. You can very easily stick out the front corner of the Type 5 and bait shots with these super thick tracks into your frontal plate, and they will bounce. But if you over-angle, you're going to be penned, and you're going to be tracked in the process. So you got to be very careful. Now, this is a pretty solid matchup. We have Tier 8s, and only a few Tier 10s, being a Foch, 705, and E100 up against us, but we are on a rather poor map, which is Redshire. The reason I say this map is poor is because there's not much positioning for us to work in our Super Heavy. Now, while the Type 5 is not incredibly fast, it can actually get up to a decent top speed of around 30 kilometers per hour, which is alright. It's got a decent power to weight as well, but yeah, this is not going to be winning any marathons anytime soon. Our BZ176 is going to beat us there by quite a bit. Well, maybe not. Alright, well, what do we have up against us in terms of Tier 9s? Only a Progetto 66, and Tier 8, they have an E75 TS, and a TS54. Now, against lower tiers is really where the Type 5 shines, because the lower the tier, the better your armor. Like, obviously, in E100's the same case, but the E100's lower plate is always going to be a weak spot. Even Tier 8's loading gold are possibly going to pen your E100 lower plate, but in a Type 5 Heavy, well, that might be a bit of a different story. This vehicle is going to be very hard to pen in any Tier 8, let alone Tier 9. So we're going to take advantage of that. We are going to head right in and see what we can do. The problem you're going to have to worry about in the Type 5 is just the sheer size of this tank. It's freaking huge. And that makes you a very easy target. You got a hatch, which is quite large, and it's just a very easy tank for artillery to pick apart. We are not detected, though, from that E75 TS, which is actually rather surprising, to be honest. We are going to make our way up here, and we're going to see if we can poke that E75 TS and get a good old bleeder out. Let's see. Well, okay, there it is. We got the enemy Foch all the way in the back, and unfortunately the shell does not hit. That is a really cringe spot to put a Foch, by the way. Like, you could not put your Foch 155 in a more lame spot. Well, the enemy is already down a Centurion, which is pretty good. We are down a pretty chunk of our health, though. There's just not much you can do about heavies, and because we aren't a super heavy, we obviously want to try and take advantage of our opponents. So, because we know where the Foch is... Ow. Okay. Well, I guess we over-angled our hull there, and we were able to get penned by the enemy. Interesting. Well, we got the Progetto, we got the 100. There you go, our first pen of the game. Yeah, I guess we just over-angled our hull. I didn't really realize that 705 is looking at us. I guess we'll have to see... Actually, he might have just penned us. I think that's the Foch, though, through our hull armor there. That's the thing you're going to have to keep in mind about this tank, is that while it does have pretty good armor, it's nothing ridiculous. Like, look at that. Right through our hatch from that Progetto. So we only have 1,700 health left already. This is why the Type 5 is in theory, a really strong tank, but in reality, it really struggles. Like, the hatch is a massive weakness. Tank destroyers in the back of the map are making it impossible to push. So right now, we're just going to wait. We're going to wait and hope that the enemy 705 or some other tank makes a play. While we have bled about half, actually more than half of our health, we still have 1,700 left, which is quite a bit, and does give us the opportunity to just kind of wait here. We can see that the rest of our team on flank 1 is basically steamrolling, and that's because the majority of the enemy team is over here. So ideally, if we just wait at this flank for the enemy to start playing aggressive, we should get some damage out. You never want to bleed more than half your health, especially judging that we've lost literally a lot more health than we've been able to deal. That's just not a positive trade in any world. So you got to be very, very careful about that. But as we can see, the enemy 705 looked away for a moment, which allowed us to get a free poke on his tank and bleed him a bit. We also saw the Progetto left, which gives us the ability to play just that little bit more aggressive. So we are now at 1,100 damage, which is obviously pretty good. Well, we got the 705, and there you go, another shot into the 705. The problem is, my team is falling apart. And this is why it's, again, good to conserve your hit points. Thankfully, we are running a turbo on this vehicle, so at least we can back out pretty dang quickly. Our team is winning the other side of the map, so we just need to back out of here as fast as possible. And with the 10 degrees of gun depression we feature, we should be able to work this ridgeline fairly effectively, which is obviously pretty important. So we're going to chill right here, and we're going to see if the enemy E100 does try poking this or not. I have a feeling he will, but I could be wrong. They also have a Tiger Mouse, which I actually have not seen. No, wait, no, they don't have a Tiger Mouse. I don't know why I said that. Let's see. The Foch is making his way up, and there you go. Track wheel, which obviously took a lot off of his tank. You always want to shoot players in their track wheels, takes advantage of their weaknesses, and while doing so, gives you the opportunity to bleed them out in the same time. So let's get another shell into the enemy Foch. We have brought him down quite a bit of health. And again, this is the great thing about a vehicle like the Type 5 is that even if you do get bled a bit, you have so much health that it doesn't really matter if you get shot once or whatever. We get a nice shot into the E100 turret, and just like that, we are already up to 3,700. So as I said, even though we started off this game pretty mediocre, we've brought it back a lot. And this is where playing in a vehicle like the Type 5 actually does a very, very solid job. So we get a bounce once, we shoot the enemy 705 in the track wheel, now we're going to angle the tank. Now the 705 does not have the most heat pen, and as we can see, he let the enemy BZ clear him. So now we're going to use the gun depression this vehicle has. We're going to aim it on the lower plate of the E100. We're going to get a nice tracking shot for 630, and there you go, we angle out our vehicle. The E100 fired AP, which allowed us to easily get that shell out, and obviously out-trade him. So we're at 5,000 damage at this point, and with the 10 degrees this vehicle has, it easily allows us to overpoke that enemy E100 and get the shell into him. So we are already at 5,500 damage now, which is obviously quite a bit, and we are going to start shooting at the enemy E75, mainly because of the fact that that is free damage, 622 dealt. Alright, well we are at 6,000 now, which is obviously quite a bit. We're going to reload just a little bit more, and I'm really hoping... Oh, wow, I can't believe that the BZ died there. Alright, well, thankfully, we are smart enough to still get a clearing shell into the enemy tank, which is obviously pretty dang important. Alright, well, we got the Progetto all the way in the back, and the E75 TS is running away. But he's running away into the enemy team, which is not ideal for us, because that means less damage. Alright, let's see if we can get a shell into the enemy Progetto, and let's see if he just... I'm really hoping he pulls up a teeny bit. However, it looks like that is not going to be the case. Either way, 6,000 damage, 2,500 blocked. Not as good as our previous game in terms of blocked, but a lot better in terms of damage. As you can see, I made some misplays in the beginning, but that's a good showcase of why you don't want to throw away your health. If you take advantage of your opponents and you get hauled down, you can do really well. And if we had saved a lot of that health for later in the battle, we definitely could have done a lot more. Even if your team is losing the other flank of the map, it's still usually safer to wait and see if the enemy team makes any aggressive plays before you try to bleed your health yourself. So we ended up dealing 6,200 damage and getting out a very solid result. The Type 5 Heavy is actually, in my opinion, a very underrated vehicle, which can get out a lot of damage. And even though we did have a Tier 8 match, the majority of the tanks we shot were Tier 10s, being the Foch 155, the Object 705A, and the E100. You noticed how we got hauled down, we used our 10 degrees of gun depression, our armor to its maximum, and at the same time, was using our 2,800 DPM to absolutely bleed out the enemy. The Type 5 has 290 mils of AP pen, which is absolutely fantastic, and as you saw, it easily butters through the majority of armor you're aiming at. So I really like this tank, and we had two pretty solid battles here to really showcase how you can take advantage of your enemies, even in a situation where it doesn't look like you're able to. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about super heavies, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure you're looking at the minimap, making sure that you are not putting yourself in a position to bleed health. And even if you do bleed health like I did in that game on Redshire, back up, collect your thoughts, and wait for the enemy to make a play. If you simply look at the minimap and you're like, oh, we're winning the other side of the map, then wait for your team to push those heavies into you, because they're either going to push into you or they're going to turn around and start looking at the guys behind them, shooting them in the rear. Either way, you're going to get damage out. And sure, while getting damage out is a time-crunching thing, you obviously want to get out as much damage as possible early game. At the end of the day, as you saw, we didn't deal that much early, but we still did 6,000. As long as you know when to take advantage, you definitely will be able to. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.